The roar of the Nakajima B5N's engine fills Fuchida's headset as he banks at 10,000 feet, circling above what should be his greatest triumph. Below, Pearl Harbor transforms into hell. Smoke towers so high he can see it bending in the upper winds, 20,000 feet at least, a black pillar visible from Hawaii to the open ocean. The Arizona burns with such ferocity that even from 2 miles up, he can see her steel glowing cherry red where the superstructure used to stand. 1,100 men down there, burning or already gone. The Oklahoma has capsized completely, her barnacle-crusted hull exposed to Hawaiian sunlight like some beached whale. California settles deeper into the mud with each minute. West Virginia blazes stem to stern, her paint blistering off in sheets. Fuchida counts the hits. 8 battleships. California, Maryland, Nevada, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, West Virginia, Arizona. 8. The entire American battle line of the Pacific Fleet, crippled or destroyed in less than 2 hours. His hands should be steady on the stick. His heart should be singing. Instead, he feels ice crystallizing in his chest. Because from 10,000 feet, Fuchida can see everything. And what he sees, what makes his throat constrict, is everything they missed. The massive repair docks sit pristine on the northern shore. Not one bomb crater. Dry dock number 1, capable of lifting a battleship clear of the water, stands ready, untouched. Beyond it, the submarine base sprawls intact, its fuel lines gleaming in the morning sun. Every valve and pump ready to service the 30-odd submarines already preparing to sortie. The Americans will hunt tonight, tomorrow at latest. His wingman's voice crackles through static. Commander, should we make another pass? Fuchida doesn't answer immediately. His eyes track east to the tank farm on the hill. Massive cylindrical structures catching the light. 4.5 million barrels of fuel oil. Irreplaceable. The lifeblood of the entire Pacific Fleet. His pilots flew right past it, multiple times. Not one incendiary dropped. Not one armor-piercing bomb walked into those thin steel walls. One lucky hit there would have done more damage than sinking every battleship in the harbor. The realization sits in his stomach like spoiled fish. Negative, he finally responds. Form up. We return to the carriers. Below, the harbor mouth gapes open. No block ships scuttled in the channel. No mines sown across the entrance. The Americans can sortie everything. Every submarine, every destroyer, every cruiser that survived within hours. By nightfall, they'll be hunting his task force across an ocean where Japan now has no forward bases, no repair facilities, nowhere to hide damaged ships except Kure, 4,000 miles away. A glint of metal catches his eye near Ford Island. He banks slightly, squinting through the morning haze. More ships. The light cruisers Detroit and Phoenix, completely oit, untouched. The heavy cruisers still at their moorings, unscathed. The destroyers, the repair ships, the fleet oilers that keep the American Navy mobile across the Pacific's vast distances. Everything that actually matters to naval power, everything except the battleships, sits undamaged. Commander? His observer taps his shoulder, pointing west with a gloved hand. The second wave is breaking off. Fuchida watches the last formations of dive bombers and fighters turn toward home, their bellies empty of ordnance. 2 waves. 183 aircraft in the first, 167 in the second. 350 planes, months of planning, the most audacious carrier strike in naval history. And they've left America's warfighting capability fundamentally intact. The Americans have 8 battleships down, but 3 carriers at sea. Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga. The spotters confirmed all 3 absent before the attack commenced. Gone. Out hunting. Already reversed course when the first bombs fell, racing back with blood in their eyes and revenge on their minds. Fuchida's intelligence briefing yesterday. Battleships win wars. Kill the battleships. Break American will. They'll sue for peace within 6 months. But Fuchida studied at Annapolis for 6 months in 1928, when Japan and America were still friends. He toured their shipyards, watched their factories, saw their automotive plants in Detroit producing more cars in a day than Japan manufactured in a month. He tried telling Admiral Yamamoto's staff, America is not a normal country. Their capacity, they cut him off, showed him reports from military intelligence proving American decadence, American softness, American inability to sustain casualties. The Americans would see their fleet burning and quit. Guarantee it, Fuchida levels out on course 315, heading for the rendezvous point where Akagi waits. His fuel gauge shows 30 minutes remaining. Enough. Barely. Through his canopy, Pearl Harbor shrinks behind him. The smoke column remains visible for another 60 miles. A funeral pyre for American complacency, yes, but also a beacon. Visible from every island, every ship, every American outpost across the Pacific. A rallying cry. His radio operator was intercepting transmissions during the attack. American voices, ragged with fury. This is not a drill. This is not a drill. The Japanese are attacking. Get every plane up. Get everything up. No panic, no breakdown, just cold, immediate rage. That's what sits wrong in Fuchida's gut. He expected chaos. Got professional fury instead. The fuel tank farm appears one last time as he gains altitude. The morning sun turning those massive cylinders into beacons. 4.5 million barrels. 1 month of fuel for the entire American Pacific Fleet. Sitting there, waiting, untouched. Tomorrow, hell, today, American engineers will drain it, disperse it, hide it in bunkers they'll excavate, in weeks. Make it invulnerable. That opportunity, gone. Because Japanese intelligence said, battleships. Focus on battleships. Nothing else matters. Fuchida thinks of Kure Naval Arsenal back home, Japan's beating heart of military production. 40,000 workers on their best day, producing perhaps one major warship monthly at full strain. He remembers reading that Mare Island Naval Shipyard in San Francisco, just one American facility out of dozens, employed 6,000 in peacetime. How many will it employ tomorrow? His hands find the throttle, pushing it forward though fuel runs low. Suddenly, he wants distance, wants ocean between himself and that harbor, because looking down, seeing what they destroyed versus what they spared, Fuchida understands something his superiors back in Japan do not. They haven't won a victory today. They've started a clock, and Japan doesn't have enough time. The Hawaiian Islands slip below the horizon. Above, the sky turns from smoke gray to crystalline blue. Perfect flying weather. Beautiful. His engine drones steady, the rhythm almost peaceful. Fuchida closes his eyes for 1 second, seeing it again. The untouched docks, the intact fuel farm, the open harbor mouth, the absent carriers. He sees something else too, something his gut knows, but his mind doesn't want to acknowledge. Those 2,400 dead Americans aren't the end of something. They're the beginning. Every mother who gets a telegram, every father who loses a son, every wife, every child, every friend. The ripples spreading outward across a nation of 130 million people who woke up this morning at peace. Now they're awake, angry, unified in ways they weren't yesterday. Japan needed them divided, soft, unwilling to fight, needed them to see Pearl Harbor and surrender. Instead, Japan has given them martyrs, given them Arizona with 1,100 men trapped inside her burning hull, given them a Sunday morning sneak attack while diplomats talked peace in Washington, given them every reason to hate, to build, to fight without mercy until Japan burns the way Arizona burns now. Fuchida opens his eyes. Ahead, somewhere over the curve of the earth, Akagi awaits with her crew celebrating. Admiral Nagumo will be pleased. Tokyo will declare a great victory. The emperor himself will praise their courage. And none of them will understand what Fuchida sees with terrible clarity. They've destroyed ships, killed men, damaged a base. But they've activated something far more dangerous. American will combined with American industry. Those untouched repair docks will work 24 hours a day now. That fuel they didn't burn will power submarines hunting their convoys. Those carriers they didn't sink will launch the counterattack. Worst of all, Japan has 6 months, maybe a year, before American production drowns them. Before the shipyards they didn't bomb start building replacement battleships. Before the factories in Detroit stop making automobiles and start making bombers. Before the sleeping giant finishes waking up and remembers how to kill. Fuchida's radio crackles. Akagi in sight. Prepare for landing sequence. He clicks acknowledgement, begins his descent. Behind him, Pearl Harbor burns. Ahead, his carrier waits with celebration and congratulations. Neither changes the mathematics now ticking in his head. Japan had one chance to break America, and that chance required destroying infrastructure, not battleships. Required killing America's ability to project power, not just hurting her pride. They did the opposite, left the tools intact, killed the men, made martyrs instead of wreckage. As his wheels touch Akagi's deck, as crew members rush forward with grins and raised fists, Fuchida sits motionless in his cockpit. The engine shudders to silence. Someone opens his canopy, shouting congratulations he can't hear through the roaring in his ears. Because he's still seeing it. Those 3 massive dry docks. That fuel farm. That open harbor entrance. The sleeping giant's eyes. Opening. The sun hadn't risen yet when the work lights blazed to life at Mare Island Naval Shipyard. December 10th, 1941. 4:47 a.m. The graveyard shift starting 3 hours early because there weren't enough hours anymore, not with the world on fire. John DeMarco stood at the edge of dry dock number 2, watching them flood it. Seawater churned white through the sluice gates, the roar drowning out everything except the klaxon signaling another shift change that wouldn't come for 9 more hours. They'd stopped the 8-hour rotations 2 days ago. Now you worked until the job was done, slept in bunks on site, woke when the next ship needed you. Through the chain link fence 300 yards away, Captain Ryonosuke Kusaka watched the same lights. Kusaka's cell in the detention facility, they called it a cell, but it had a window with actual glass and a bed with actual sheets, overlooked Mare Island's southern basin, geography's final insult, imprisoned with a perfect view of what he'd tried to warn them about. The newspaper lay folded under his mattress. 3 days old, smuggled by a guard whose uncle had died on Arizona. The man brought it not from kindness, but from cruelty, wanting Kusaka to see. The headline still burned behind his eyes when he blinked. Mare Island Shipyard. 3 shifts, 24-hour operations beginning tomorrow. Tomorrow was yesterday now. Today was the thing he'd feared. Kusaka had toured Mare Island in September 1939. Part of a Japanese naval delegation, all smiles and photographs and careful notes disguised as tourist curiosity. The yard employed perhaps 6,000 then. Peacetime numbers, casual efficiency, men who went home for dinner and returned the next morning. They'd built submarines mostly, some destroyers, a cruiser every 18 months. Respectable for a secondary facility. He'd filed a report, mentioned, almost in passing, that America possessed 12 such yards. 12 Mare Islands scattered across 2 coasts like beads on a string. His superiors in Tokyo had nodded politely and filed it somewhere it would never surface again. The mathematics had seemed theoretical then. Now, Kusaka watched theory become flesh. The first workers arrived in trucks, dozens of them, headlights cutting the pre-dawn dark. Then buses. A river of men and women flowing through gates that never closed anymore. He'd been counting since 4 a.m. when the lights woke him. lost count at 2,000. More kept coming. A woman walked past carrying a welder's mask, her hair tied back in a red bandana. Another balanced a rivet gun against her shoulder like a rifle. Before December 7th, most of these women had been secretaries, teachers, housewives. Now, they were the arsenal. The article had mentioned numbers. Kusaka retrieved it from under the mattress, reading again by the yellow sodium lights bleeding through his window. Mare Island Naval Shipyard announces expansion to 46,000 workers within 6 months. Round-the-clock operations across all facilities. Production targets classified, but sources indicate 14 major vessels scheduled for repair in first 90 days. 14 vessels, 90 days, not construction, repair. Getting damaged ships back to sea. Kusaka thought of Kure Naval Arsenal, Japan's largest, most modern facility, the pride of the Imperial Navy. Kure employed 40,000 workers total. On a good month, working every furnace and slip, Kure could produce 1 major warship. Maybe repair 3 or 4 damaged ones if you didn't count the backlog. Mare Island was 1 American yard, 1 of 12, and they were just getting started. Through the window, he watched a massive crane swing into position over Dry Dock 2. The scale made him dizzy. These weren't machines built for peacetime maintenance. These were tools designed to lift battleship gun turrets, to swing entire destroyer hulls like children's toys. A guard brought breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast with butter, coffee that actually steamed. Kusaka stared at the tray. In 3 days of detention, he'd eaten better than he had in 6 months aboard ship. The guard noticed him staring. Something wrong with the food? No. Kusaka's English was excellent, honed at the Naval War College. It's very good. Yeah, well. The guard shrugged. We got plenty. We got plenty. 3 words that contained whole equations. After the guard left, Kusaka returned to the window. The sun was rising now, painting Mare Island in shades of industrial gold. More workers flooding through the gates. Trucks delivering steel plate, copper wire, rubber gaskets. The million components that made a warship breathe. The flow never stopped. He did the mathematics his superiors should have done in 1940. 1 Mare Island. 46,000 workers, 14 repairs in 90 days. 12 Mare Islands, 552,000 workers, 168 repairs per quarter. And those were just the naval yards. Didn't count the commercial shipyards converting to military production. The factories retooling to build destroyers instead of merchant hulls. Japan had Kure. 40,000 workers. 1 ship per month if everything went perfectly. The Americans could lose at Pearl Harbor every single month for a year, lose every battleship, every cruiser, and still outbuild Japan's entire navy. The catastrophic part? Tokyo thought they'd won a victory. Kusaka remembered the intelligence briefings before Pearl Harbor. The confident assessments. Destroy their battleship fleet. America sues for peace. They're soft from luxury. Won't stomach a long war. Their democracy can't mobilize like our empire. From his window, he watched democracy mobilize. A woman in coveralls climbed into a crane's cab. Couldn't have been more than 20. Moving with the casual confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Below her, a work crew measured steel plate for hull patches. Beyond them, another crew assembled scaffolding around a submarine's conning tower. Every motion purposeful, no wasted movement. The entire yard humming with orchestrated intensity. These weren't soldiers following orders. These were free people who'd chosen to be here, who'd lined up for jobs, who worked through exhaustion because Arizona still burned in their minds. That was the thing Tokyo never understood. You couldn't break this kind of will because it wasn't imposed. It was volunteered. Kusaka watched until full daylight, counting what he could see. 37 cranes operating simultaneously. 56 welding stations, their arc flash visible even in morning sun. Trucks arriving in convoys of 20 or more, the submarine tender Canopus being towed into Dry Dock 4, her hull torn open by bombs at Cavite. She'd be back at sea in 60 days, the foreman told workers in a voice that carried across the water. 60 days. Japan couldn't lay a destroyer's keel in 60 days. He thought about his fellow officers back home, celebrating Pearl Harbor, toasting Nagumo's success, counting sunk battleships like trophies. None of them understood what sinking those 8 ships had actually accomplished. They'd made America angry. And anger, Kusaka now understood, was a terrible fuel. It burned hotter than oil, lasted longer than any supply line. Every worker flooding through Mar Island's gates carried it. The fury of a Sunday morning, the violation of peace, the need to answer treachery with overwhelming force. Japan had 6 months of oil reserves, maybe a year if they rationed carefully. America had 12 Mare Islands working 24 hours a day, fueled by outrage that would burn for years. The mathematics weren't theoretical anymore. They were roaring to life outside his window, impossible to ignore, building toward a conclusion that Tokyo still couldn't see. Kusaka carefully tore the newspaper into strips, fed them into the toilet one by one, watching American newsprint dissolve in American plumbing. Some truths were too devastating to share. Let his fellow prisoners sleep easy, dreaming of victory. He knew better now. The guards would release him eventually, ship him to a proper POW camp somewhere inland, away from windows that overlooked shipyards, away from the evidence. But he'd seen enough. Japan hadn't sunk America's fleet at Pearl Harbor. They'd interrupted a schedule, and now, watching Mare Island's cranes swing against the rising sun, Kusaka understood the difference between those two things was the difference between winning and losing a war. The toilet flushed. The last of the newspaper vanished. Outside, the shipyard's pulse continued, relentless, tireless, building toward an answer Pearl Harbor had asked but never wanted answered. Lieutenant Takeshi Naito stands in water that shouldn't exist inside a warship. The Pacific sloshes against his shins, brown with disturbed silt and rust flakes. Above him, a damaged bulkhead weeps rivulets that catch the arc welder's light like liquid fire. The air tastes of metal and diesel and something organic. Decaying paint, maybe, or the ghost of seawater trapped in compartments for 98 days. USS California. 2 torpedoes, 1 bomb. Sunk at her moorings December 7th. Tokyo classified her. Total loss. Permanent. Now Naito stands inside her corpse while 3,000 Americans resurrect it. They brought him here to identify ordnance. A safety precaution. Let the Japanese officer mark any unexploded shells before workers cut into the wrong bulkhead. Naito understands the real purpose. This is theater. Psychological warfare in reverse. Look what we can do with your victories. It's working. The pumps never stop. Massive diesel engines somewhere deeper in the ship maintain a constant roar, fighting the Pacific itself, draining California's flooded spaces faster than the ocean can reclaim them. Naito counts 7 separate pump stations visible from this one compartment, each one larger than anything aboard a Japanese destroyer. Lieutenant, his escort, a young ensign with Oklahoma dust still on his boots, gestures toward the engine room hatch. We need you forward. Naito follows through passages he memorized from pre-war intelligence photographs. California-class battleship, 40,000 tons. He'd studied her layout for months, identifying vulnerable points, calculating torpedo spread patterns. The knowledge feels obscene now, walking through the wounds he helped inflict. They emerge into a cathedral of destruction. California's forward engine room spreads 3 decks deep, a cavern of shattered machinery and emergency lighting. Water stands waist deep here despite the pumps. 2 torpedo hits, 1 amidships, 1 aft, should have killed her propulsion permanently. Naito sees both impact points, jagged holes where 16-inch plating peeled inward like paper. But that's not what stops his breath. What stops him is the crane. It descends through the temporary opening American workers cut in California's deck. a massive industrial hook attached to cables thick as a man's thigh. The crane operator, some civilian in a hard hat who probably made refrigerators 6 months ago, positions the hook with casual precision. Workers in the flooded space attach chains to a mangled reduction gear assembly. Naito knows this part. Every Japanese naval officer knows it. The reduction gear connects turbines to propeller shafts, a precision-forged component requiring specialized metallurgy and months of machining. Mitsubishi's Yokohama plant produces perhaps 4 per year, each one irreplaceable, each one treated like a shrine offering. The crane operator gets his signal. The cables go taut. 6 tons of reduction gear assembly lifts free of its mounting with a screech of shearing bolts. Water cascades from the damaged housing. The crane swivels, carrying its burden toward the deck opening. Where? Naito can't finish the question. His mouth has gone dry. Scrap barge, the ensign says, consulting a clipboard. Total replacements faster than repair. New unit ships from Philadelphia next week. The reduction gear disappears through the opening. Naito hears it hit the barge topside. A hollow boom of metal on metal. Philadelphia. Next week. They're throwing it away because building new is faster than fixing old. His hands start shaking. He makes fists, desperate to hide it, but the ensign has already moved deeper into the engine room, calling out grid coordinates for unexploded ordnance inspection. Through California's ripped hull, Naito can see into the harbor beyond. Oklahoma lies capsized 300 yards away, her bottom a rust-streaked island. Work barges cluster around her like pilot fish, even she, completely inverted, deemed absolutely unsalvageable, swarms with cutting crews and salvage engineers. You good, Lieutenant? The ensign has noticed something in Naito's face. Yes. The lie comes automatically. Show me the aft magazine. I need to verify shell positions. They wade deeper into California's guts. Naito performs his assigned task, marking locations of Japanese ordnance with chalk, ensuring American workers won't cut into anything explosive. The irony crushes him. He's helping them resurrect the ship he helped kill. In the aft magazines, he finds more evidence of the Gulf. Damaged 3-inch shells, American anti-aircraft ammunition, lie scattered where seawater disrupted their storage. A work crew shovels them into bins, hundreds of rounds treated like coal. How many shells? Naito lost count at 300. Rejected lot, a chief petty officer explains, mistaking Naito's stare for curiosity. Saltwater contamination. We'll smelt them down, recast the brass. Rejected, smelted, recast. Words that don't exist in Japanese naval logistics. Back home, damaged shells get carefully dried, inspected, rehabilitated. Nothing gets wasted because nothing can be replaced quickly. Here, contaminated ammunition becomes scrap metal on a Tuesday afternoon. 2 hours later, topside, Naito stands on California's canted deck while his escort confers with a salvage coordinator. The harbor spreads before him like a vision of industrial hell. Nevada sits beached at Hospital Point, her bow a construction site swarming with workers. West Virginia's superstructure rises from the water, pump hoses running into her like feeding tubes. Repair Dock 1, the massive concrete basin he'd studied in reconnaissance photos, already holds Pennsylvania, her torpedo damage receiving round-the-clock attention. Repair Dock 1. Untouched, December 7th. Fuchida's pilots never hit it. Naito remembers the intelligence briefing. Secondary target, prioritize battleships. They'd made the docks secondary. Now those docks devour Japanese victories at assembly line speed. We'll have California in dry dock 2 within 14 days, the salvage coordinator says, loud enough for Naito to hear. Casual, matter of fact. The way you discuss grocery deliveries. Back in full service by April. 4 months from sinking to combat ready. The coordinator notices Naito listening. Smiles. Not cruel, just American. Confident. You guys did good work on her, but not good enough. He claps the ensign on the shoulder. Take our guest back to detention. We're done here. The motor launch crosses the harbor toward the internment facility on Hospital Point. Naito sits in the stern, watching California recede. Her pumps still thunder. Her work crews still swarm. Even wounded, she devours more labor and material in an afternoon than a Japanese repair facility sees in months. And California is just one ship, in one harbor, of one navy. That night, in the detention barracks, Naito retrieves the small diary his captors permit. The blank page waits. He unscrews his pen. A cheap American-made instrument they issued him. Plastic instead of metal. Disposable instead of permanent. Like everything here. Made to be replaced. His hand moves across the page in careful characters. We did not sink their fleet. We interrupted their schedule. He stares at the sentence. Adds more. California. Total loss. Returns to war in 4 months. How many months to build a new Japanese battleship? 36. 48. We trade years for their weeks. The barracks are quiet, except for distant pump noise from the harbor, a constant mechanical heartbeat that never sleeps. Somewhere out there, California's resurrection continues under floodlights. American workers on swing shift doing what Naito's superiors said was impossible. He thinks about the reduction gear. 6 tons of precision machinery, dropped onto a scrap barge like garbage. He thinks about Kure Naval Arsenal, where such a component would be photographed, studied, perhaps repaired over months by master craftsmen who'd treat it like a religious artifact. He thinks about the mathematics that should have stopped December 7th. Naito closes the diary. Outside, the pumps keep running. Through the smoke of 3 carriers, Yamaguchi watches the Americans come. They arrive in groups, 12 Dauntlesses from Enterprise, 8 more from Yorktown, another wave from Hornet. The sky fills with them, SBD dive bombers, ungainly and slow, transformed into angels of death the moment they push over. Yamaguchi has seen many things in his naval career. He's never seen this. The methodical dismemberment of the Kido Butai, the elite carrier force that 6 months ago ruled the Pacific from Hawaii to Ceylon. Akagi burns first. The carrier that launched Fuchida's planes against Pearl Harbor, now a furnace. Kaga follows within minutes, her flight deck erupting in a chain of explosions as bombs cook off in the hangar. Soryu, the 3rd Pearl Harbor veteran, takes 4 direct hits amidships. She'll sink in 20 minutes. Now it's Hiryu's turn. The first bomb hits at 17:03 hours. Yamaguchi feels it through his boots, a compression wave that travels up the carrier's spine, shaking rivets loose. The second bomb lands 14 seconds later. Forward elevator, dead center. The massive platform, designed to lift 18-ton aircraft between decks, simply disappears. In its place, a hole to hell, venting fire from the hangar bay. An aide rushes up with reports. Flooding in 3 compartments. Fire mains severed. Steering compromised. The kind of damage that would send any Japanese carrier to the bottom within the hour. But Yamaguchi isn't thinking about Hiryu anymore. He's thinking about Yorktown. Through his binoculars, he watches her. CV-5. The carrier his intelligence officers swore was sunk at Coral Sea 3 weeks ago. He'd read the contact reports himself. 1 bomb hit, severe fires, heavy list, retiring from action. The analysis came back definitive. 3 months minimum in a repair yard, possibly 6. More likely, she'd be written off completely. Too damaged, too expensive. Not worth the effort when America could just build new. Yorktown launches another strike. Her deck crew moves with practiced efficiency, spotting aircraft, arming ordnance, launching planes into the smoke-filled sky. No hesitation, no visible damage. She looks like she just left the builder's yard. 72 hours. That's what Yamaguchi will learn later, from interrogations, from captured documents, from the post-war admissions that haunt whatever years remain to him. Pearl Harbor's repair docks, the ones Fuchida didn't destroy, worked around the clock. 1,400 men in 3 shifts. They patched a bomb-shattered carrier in the time it would take Kure to manufacture replacement parts. They didn't even do a complete repair. Just enough. Seal the hull, restore power, get her combat capable. The Americans treated a fleet carrier like a damaged truck. Patch it, fuel it, send it back to the fight. They'd do the real repairs. Later, if she survived. If not, they'd build another. The third bomb hits Hiryu's bridge. Yamaguchi staggers but doesn't fall. Around him, junior officers clutch for support as the carrier shudders. Fire erupts from the chart room. Someone screams. The communications officer vanishes in a burst of flame, his last message to the fleet dying on his lips. Through the flames, Yamaguchi sees the fleet status board. Someone updated it before they died. 4 carriers marked with red X's. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. The entire first-line striking force of the combined fleet, gone in one afternoon. Against them, Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown. All 3 still operational. Still launching strikes. Still fighting. The mathematics suffocate him. This is what Pearl Harbor was supposed to prevent. Japan's 10 carriers versus America's 7. An advantage, but not decisive. The attack was meant to reduce that to 10 versus 4, buying Japan 18 months to fortify the Pacific, to make the cost of reconquest so terrible that America would negotiate peace. Instead, they got 6 months. 6 months between Pearl Harbor and this funeral pyre floating dead in the water off Midway. 6 months of American rage translating into steel. And the carriers keep coming. Yamaguchi knows the names now. Knows them like a condemned man knows the face of his executioner. Essex. Independence. Princeton. Names painted on hulls that don't exist yet. Ships being assembled in yards from New York to San Francisco. His intelligence staff briefs him weekly on American construction. 27 Essex-class fleet carriers. 8 light carriers. Dozens of escort carriers. All laid down before Pearl Harbor or within weeks after. The first Essex will commission in 9 months. By this time next year, America will launch 1 fleet carrier per month. Per month. That's faster than Japan can build destroyers. Japan's answer? Shinano. 1 ship. A converted Yamato-class hull that won't see water for 2 years, won't be combat ready for 3. By the time she launches, America will have 15 new carriers at sea. Captain Kaku appears through the smoke, his face blistered. Sir, damage control reports fires out of control. Recommend we transfer your flag to... No. Yamaguchi's voice comes out steady. Calm. The calmness of a man who's already dead and knows it. I will remain with the ship. Kaku's eyes widen. Sir. Tell me something, Captain. Yamaguchi gestures toward Yorktown, still visible through the smoke and flame. How many workers does it take to repair a carrier in 3 days? Kaku blinks at the non sequitur. Sir, I don't... 1,400. 3 shifts. Round the clock. I saw the intelligence report last month. Yorktown should have been in dry dock until August. Instead, she's killing us in June. He pauses. We're not fighting a navy, Captain. We're fighting a factory. The deck tilts beneath them. 20 degrees. 25. Hiryu's death roll has begun. All hands abandon ship. Kaku grabs Yamaguchi's arm. Sir, please. Yamaguchi pulls free. Around him, men stumble toward the starboard rail, toward the rope nets and the cold Pacific water. He watches them go. Young officers, good men. Most of them trained for years, irreplaceable specialists in carrier operations. Japan has no reserve, no training pipeline deep enough to replace what burns here today. America has colleges full of engineering students, high schools teaching navigation, a civilian aviation industry that dwarfs Japan's military production. They'll replace every pilot lost here within weeks. Japan will take years. Through the smoke, Enterprise launches another strike. Yamaguchi watches the tiny aircraft, SBD Dauntlesses, TBD Devastators, climb into formation. Obsolete planes by Japanese standards. Slow. Poorly armored. But there are so many. And when they fall, America simply builds more. The lesson of Pearl Harbor crystallizes in his mind with terrible clarity. You cannot sink an idea. You cannot torpedo a factory. You cannot bomb a democracy's will. Japan sank 8 battleships and killed 2,400 men. In response, America built a fleet larger than the entire Imperial Japanese Navy. Built it in the time Japan needed to repair what already floated. The water reaches Yamaguchi's knees. Hiryu settles deeper, her death throes gentle now. Final. Most of the crew has abandoned her. A few diehards remain. Engine room crews trying to pump water. Damage control parties fighting fires that can't be fought. Warriors doing their duty until the sea claims them. Yamaguchi unslings his binoculars. Polishes the lenses with his sleeve. A lifetime habit. Focuses one last time on the American carriers. Enterprise is already recovering aircraft. Yorktown steams in formation. Her impossible repair a monument to everything Japan miscalculated. Hornet turns into the wind for another launch. They'll lose Yorktown tonight. Japanese submarine torpedoes will finish what Hiryu's bombers started. But Yamaguchi knows the truth now. It doesn't matter. 2 more Essex-class hulls were laid down last week. By the time Yorktown sinks, her replacements are already taking shape. The water reaches his chest. Cold. Shockingly cold for tropical Pacific. Hiryu's list increases. 40 degrees now. Unstoppable. Captain Kaku appears beside him, refused to abandon ship after all. They stand together in the rising water. Was it worth it? Kaku asks quietly. Pearl Harbor? Yamaguchi thinks of Fuchida circling above the flames, of the Arizona exploding, Oklahoma capsizing, the beautiful violence of a perfect tactical strike. He thinks of what they didn't destroy. Repair docks, fuel tanks, submarines, and most of all, the 3 carriers that weren't there. We had 6 months, Yamaguchi says. From December to June, that was the price of our mistake. The water reaches his throat. Hiryu groans. Metal tearing, compartments flooding. She'll take 400 men with her. 400 irreplaceable sailors, specialists, warriors. America will replace them with factory workers. Women who've never seen the sea, welding hull plates. College boys learning navigation from books. A democracy mobilizing its whole population for war. That was the thing Japanese intelligence never understood. Free men don't fight harder than imperial subjects, but they build faster, engineer better, innovate constantly. Because the American who designs a better radar, improves a dive bomber, speeds up a repair, that American gets promoted, earns bonuses, makes a name. The Japanese engineer who innovates? He disrupts production schedules, challenges tradition, risks dishonor. The water covers Yamaguchi's mouth. He tilts his head back, takes one last breath of smoky air. His final view. Enterprise turning into the wind. Her deck spotted with aircraft, ready to launch another strike. By the time she lands those planes, Hiryu will be gone. The Kido Butai will be gone. Japan's carrier advantage will be gone. But America's factories will still be running 3 shifts, 24 hours, building the fleet that will appear offshore of Tokyo in 3 years, demanding unconditional surrender. Yamaguchi lets the water take him, understanding too late what Fuchida knew immediately. They woke a sleeping the crane catches an updraft from the harbor, spinning lazily above the rusted hull before settling on the water's oily surface. Zenji Abe watches it float, white paper against black petroleum. 70 years of Arizona's slow bleeding. His hands shake. Not from age, from memory, 1985. The Hilton Hawaiian Village conference room. Fluorescent lights harsh on folding tables. Joseph Langdell across from him, 73 years old, Arizona survivor, extending his hand. Abe had stared at that hand for 15 seconds that felt like 15 years. This man pulled 47 sailors from burning oil, while Abe's bomb, 500 kilograms, dead center on the forward magazine, turned the ship into a crematorium. Langdell kept his hand extended, patient, no hatred in his eyes, just curiosity. Abe took it. The handshake felt like touching high-voltage wire. "I was there," Langdell said simply. "Turret 4. The explosion threw me 60 feet into the water." "I put the bomb through your deck," Abe heard himself say in broken English. "I killed your friends." "Yeah," Langdell nodded, didn't let go of his hand. "You did. You want to tell me why?" And Abe, who'd spent 40 years not thinking about December 7th, found himself explaining. The propaganda. The certainty that Americans were soft, luxury weakened, would surrender after one hard blow. The intelligence assessments that said destroying the battleships meant destroying their will. Langdell listened, then laughed. Not cruel, just bitter and knowing. "Soft?" He shook his head. "Son, you made every factory worker in America want to kill you. Every farm boy, every clerk, every mother. You unified us like nothing else could have." They had dinner that night. Langdell introduced him to 6 other Arizona survivors, men who should have wanted him dead. Instead, they asked questions. What was he thinking at 10,000 feet? Did he know about the carriers being gone? Had Japanese intelligence really believed America would quit? One survivor, Ray Emery, showed Abe a photograph. Mare Island Naval Shipyard, December 1941. Women wielding welding torches. 3 shifts running 24 hours. The caption, 46,000 workers employed within 6 months. "We didn't just repair ships," Emery said. "We built a whole new navy while we fixed the old one. You sank California? We raised her in 98 days. Yorktown took a bomb at Coral Sea. Should have been out for months. We patched her in 72 hours and sent her to Midway." Abe did the math silently. Japan's entire Kure arsenal couldn't match 1 American yard. "You thought Pearl Harbor was the end," Langdell said quietly. "It was our starting gun. Now Abe returns every year, places cranes in the water, learns the names carved on the memorial wall, all 1,177, speaks to school groups when asked, mostly Japanese students, children who need to understand. A park ranger approaches, young woman with kind eyes. "Mr. Abe, those students are ready when you are," he nods, takes a breath, turns to face 15 teenagers from Hiroshima, notebooks ready, faces solemn with the weight of historical obligation. "Let me tell you about 3 things we didn't destroy on December 7th, 1941, he begins in Japanese, the ranger translating to English for the handful of American visitors who've gathered, and why those 3 things destroyed us. The students lean forward. First, the repair docks, all 3 untouched. We sank ships but left intact the machinery to raise them. California, West Virginia, Nevada, all returned to service. We gave them 90 days of inconvenience and thought it was victory." A student raises her hand. "What about the fuel?" 4.5 million barrels, right there." Abe points to the eastern hills visible from the memorial. "One good bombing run. Japan controls the Pacific for 6 months while America rebuilds supply lines. We flew right past it, focused on the glory targets, the battleships, ignored the logistics that make navies function." He pauses, remembers Commander Fuchida's face in the ready room after the attack, the forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. But the worst mistake, the carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga, all at sea, all hunting us by nightfall. We destroyed obsolete battleships and left America's future fleet untouched. 6 months later at Midway, those carriers sank Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. The entire Kido Butai, dead. Japan's elite carrier force traded for one American carrier. One. Why? A boy in the back, voice breaking slightly. Why did our intelligence not know? Abe closes his eyes. The question he's asked himself for 50 years. Because we believed our own propaganda. We told ourselves Americans were weak, individualistic, couldn't stomach sacrifice. We calculated their industrial capacity but dismissed it. Thought democracies couldn't mobilize like empires. He opens his eyes. Pearl Harbor proved us wrong in the worst possible way. The ranger asks, "What do you mean? A democracy at peace looks weak because its strength is potential, not deployed. The factories, the workers, the will to sacrifice, all existed before December 7th. We didn't destroy American capability. We activated it." He gestures to the memorial, to the names, to the oil still seeping. These 1,177 men didn't die defeating us. They died unifying America. Every war bond sold, every woman who took a factory job, every round-the-clock shift at the shipyards, all traceable to this morning. We killed Americans on a Sunday without declaration, without warning, made them outraged instead of cautious. One girl is crying silently. Abe knows that weight, carries it himself. "I meet with the survivors every year," he says softly. "They have forgiven me. I have not forgiven myself. But I come here to remember, because memory is the only thing that prevents repetition." He produces another crane from his jacket pocket, this one folded from a page of his own diary. December 7th, 1941, written in exultant Japanese about victory. "I was wrong that day. Wrong about America. Wrong about war. Wrong about what makes nations strong." He places the crane on the memorial railing. "Free people work harder than slaves. Countries that build for peace can outbuild anyone fighting for conquest. Japan learned this in fire. I come here to remember the cost of forgetting." The students bow. The ranger thanks him. Visitors who overheard nod solemnly. But Abe stays, watching both cranes float above Arizona's tomb. Somewhere below, in the dark water, 1,177 men remain at their posts. Men he killed. Men who, in dying, awakened something Japan couldn't defeat with all the carriers and battleships and warrior spirit in the Pacific. Joseph Langdell died in 2015. Ray Emery in 2016. One by one, the men who forgave him are going. Soon, Abe will be the last witness to both the attack and the reconciliation. He speaks to Arizona directly, words in English now, learned painstakingly over decades. "I am sorry. I carry you all. I will carry you until I die." The wind shifts. Both cranes drift toward the submerged hull, white on black. Forgiveness on grief. Behind him, the Japanese students photograph the memorial. Tomorrow, they'll write essays about the mistake, about hubris, about the mathematics of will versus steel. Some will become teachers, peace advocates, bridge builders. Abe taught them well. The sleeping giant Japan awakened in 1941 wasn't American industry, though that proved devastating enough. It was something deeper, the unified fury of free people. Choosing war. That force, once roused, built 27 carriers, while Japan built one, raised total loss battleships in weeks, turned scrap metal into new fleets. Pearl Harbor didn't destroy American capability. It ended American patience. Abe watches the cranes disappear into the oil slick, then slowly walks back toward the shore. His translator badge catches the sun. Tomorrow he'll speak at another school. The day after, another group of survivors. His pilgrimage of witness continues until memory itself becomes the memorial. The water laps against Arizona's hull. The oil seeps. The names remain. And one old pilot, who made the biggest mistake in history, keeps returning to count the cost.